Hi, this is Lazy D. I do a lot of service work on mostly side-by-sides for local ranchers and hunters. I couldn't find any information on the internet on how to replace the timing belt on a Kawasaki Mule Pro. This is my first attempt at a how-to video. Please like and comment, and thank you. This video should apply to 2016 to 2022 Mule Pro models. This one is a 2018 or 19 I'm working on, and it has a broken timing belt. I'm gonna go ahead and crank it so you can hear what that sounds like. So the way that I verified that the timing belt is broken, or one of the ways, is you can take the engine oil cap off, and if you look down in this hole with a light, you can see the end of the exhaust cam shaft, and you can have someone crank it for you, or if you're by yourself, you could like hold your phone over the hole maybe, I don't know, some way, but look and see if that's spinning when you're cranking, and if it's not, the timing belt is not engaging. So the second way that I verified this, you can do it, if you can figure this out either one ways, you don't need to check both ways, but this is the timing cover. You can take this top bolt out, it's an 8mm, and you can pry this back enough with a screwdriver to get a good look in there. It probably comes back half or 3/4 of an inch, and you can see it was very obvious to me that my timing belt was broken. I have the factory service manual here, and I'm just holding over if you want to pause and read on this. It gives you an inspection procedure for checking the timing belt. If you were going through all this work, you might as well replace the timing belt. The service schedule doesn't give any service life for the timing belt. I've worked on a few of these bikes. I think about 1,000 hours is probably right about when you'd want to do it. I recently replaced an engine on one that had 1,500 hours and the factory belt was still fine, but I don't think you'd want to push it that far. This one that broke only has about 400 hours on it, but these are the parts that I got. If you were doing this job as a preventative measure, this is all you would need. Factory timing belt tensioner. I think they're Chinese made anyway. There are some aftermarket ones I would recommend for the cost of what these are. I think it was like $100, maybe 80, just getting the factory ones. Place like Partzilla, or there's a few others that have awesome exploded diagrams. You can look through and find any parts, including if you need extra ones, like I had that bent crankshaft sprocket retaining ring, or like that timing cover with a hole in it. You could easily find them there, and they could get them to you pretty quickly. I just want to go over the tools I used. Pretty simple tools everyone should have. Ratchet, 3/8 drive, 14mm socket, 8mm socket. I was using a 10mm socket, then 1/4 inch drive step with a swivel was helpful with the timing cover bolts. Pick tool to clean out the screws. Little screwdriver I was using for something. This #1 Phillips on an impact is very nice to have for working on these Kawasaki's. They use a lot of these. And then just an impact makes things helpful. 3/8 drive with some extensions and sockets and a few metric wrenches. So with basic tools, anyone should be able to accomplish it. So now we've confirmed that the timing belt's broken. Supposedly this engine's a non-interference engine. It's a Chinese-made Chery engine. They use them in all the mules. So being a non-interference engine, if the pistons are all the way up and the valves are all the way open, the pistons will not contact the valves or damage them. So if the timing belt breaks, it should be all right to just go ahead and replace the belt and set timing again, and it should be good to go. So I'm gonna start tearing into this, and I have the instruction manual, but I'll see how far I can get first and then consult that for further details. But basically we gotta get these timing belt covers off. There's one there and one that's pretty far down there. I think it's gonna be easier to get to from the bottom. So if you're doing this on the ground, it's gonna suck, but you're gonna have to get down there. Take the skid plate off. It's like a #1 Phillips. I'll show you that here in a minute. So looking down on the engine at the first glance, I can see I'm gonna need to take this, looks like probably a heat shield out that's underneath this radiator hose mount. It's 2 14mm. So it seems like for access to some of these bolts, it's gonna be easier to take this cover off that's behind the seat. So you probably have a bunch of your stuff stacked back here, so you should probably clean it off. Anytime before working on one of these bikes, you should definitely just clean it off in general. I use either a backpack blower, air hose, or pressure wash, depending on how dirty it is. But if you're opening things up, you should try to get it as clean as you can. So I'm gonna pop that cover off. So what I did is I took these 4 panel clips out across the back. There's screws in the front. Trying to take those out is difficult. They can strip off. So in this case, one of them stripped off, so it's gonna be easier for me just to pull this up and out of the way. You gotta work it around these kind of stops for the bed on each side. And then I'm gonna like tie it up with either a bungee or a ratchet strap or something. So quick and dirty, bungee through the clip holes around the back of the roll bar deal. A lot more room so I can reach back under. I'm gonna have to get a wrench down under these bolts here that hold this heat shield. So that's what I'm getting at. The top and bottom of these bolts, 14 millimeter. So the tools I used to get these bolts out were 3/8 impact, 6-inch extension, and a 14 millimeter wobble socket on the end. You definitely don't need a wobble socket. I just grabbed mine. Standard wrench, short wrench, both 14 millimeter. And I was able to reach behind with the long one to get the right side one, and then reach way back there with the shorty underneath and hold the nut on the back side of this one. So get that cover off. So heat shield is off. There's another little bracket underneath here that kind of moves around, but it's fine. We'll just have to make sure to line that up. We put it back together. I can see like 4 of the timing cover bolts down here and around the side. So I'm going to take off everything I can on top first and go from there. So I got 2 of the 8 millimeter bolts out with the 1/4 inch ratchet, like 10-inch extensions, swivel on the end, 8 millimeter. I just wanted to show you the top one before I pull it out. There's actually a little standoff piece in here to keep the timing cover spaced right on the top, so don't drop that. So the one down below, 10 millimeter ratchet wrench, very easy to get to. It's actually the same bolt that holds the dipstick tube on. And once that is out, this is pretty loose. Oh yeah, if we can see here, timing belt definitely broken. So I'm gonna fiddle around with this. I think I'd wheel this out without damaging anything. This is the top half of the timing cover. So timing or upper timing cover off. You can definitely tell the belt is broken. There's a hole in the side of the timing cover, so you might want to get one of these when you're ordering your parts. I'll do a section of this, all the parts I got to do this at some point. So I lifted mine up. Obviously you gotta use your own lifting techniques. This is at your own risk. Most side-by-sides don't have any designated lift points. I use these kind of member beams here. It might be a little bit better if you put it on the frame, if you took the skid plates off before you lifted it, but I gotta get this one off, and this keeps the arms out of the way so I don't have to move anything, and it's steady enough for me, but obviously use your best judgment. It's all on you. So I just want to get a close-up on these screws. A lot of them get pretty dirty. I cannot emphasize enough that you clean these out so you don't strip this off. It'll make your life way easier. It takes like 2 seconds. So yeah, there's probably like 12 screws or so here. So we just need to take, it looks like the rear skid plate off. So you may want to, these are all like the same #1 Phillips bits. Probably clean them out as best you can with like a pick tool or something before you strip off your Phillips bit inside there and get all pissed off. And usually they come out pretty good. Otherwise you might have to drill one or something. So I take the skid plate off, and it's really hard to clean down here that well. So there's a bunch of crap. So you probably don't want to work in all that. So now like I'm gonna just box up all my tools real quick and then just bring the air hose over here and just blow everything off as best I can. Then I'm just gonna sweep up the mess after. Working in a mess is impossible. So getting these bikes as clean as you can before you start really helps, but in cases like this, it's pretty unavoidable. But I can see the timing cover up there, and overall it's looking promising. The drive shaft's kind of in the way a little bit, but I'll be able to work around it, I think. Earplugs, safety glasses. So to take the belt off, I'm going to use a 13 millimeter short socket with a universal swivel ratchet. There's the pivot one on the bottom. This one, both these bolts you just have to loosen. They're both 13 millimeter. This one you can sneak by the belt with this here, loosen it, and then the other one you actually have to get up the other way and hold this up there. There is a hot battery terminal there off the alternator, so you probably want to disconnect the battery before you do this. I did not, but I would advise to do that. Yeah, you just gotta loosen it up, and then you'll be able to shove the alternator out of the way, and it'll loosen up the belt for you. This was looking up where the belt was. You're gonna have to fish it out of there. It's a little tight around the top of the water pump pulley up there, but it'll come off. Just work it out. So I've gotten to the point of taking the crankshaft pulley / balancer off, and I have no good way of holding the engine. So I'm gonna take these splash guards off the back. I'm gonna try to leave these ones in and just take all the perimeter ones out. It is standard panel clips, and then that #1 Phillips again. You're definitely gonna want one of these to work on one of these Kawasaki's. So I took the perimeter bolts out, and there's a little screw that hides back in here. That's the hidden one, and then there's a hidden clip kind of right back in here that I was able to pop out. And I still can't get it. So I'm gonna have to take this other panel right in front of it off. 3 clips, and it should pop off. Bam, it's all out. So now this is just 10mm bolts all the way around. You'll have to probably use like a socket and swivel. That's what I'm gonna do anyway, like an impact, and it should come off pretty easy. So I wiggled the belt cover out of there, and now I'm not gonna use the right service tool, but I'm gonna improvise a way to hold the clutch. You probably don't wanna stick anything metal down in here. There's the spider of the clutch actually rides on that shaft, and it should stay smooth. It's like a mirror finish, so you don't want to do that. So what I'm going to do is put my screwdriver handle right in there, and when I turn the engine, the way I'm going to turn it to loosen that bolt, it's just going to catch this screwdriver right here. And it's a soft handle. It's against the casing in a good spot. Soft handle. Should be all right. So back up in the air, screwdriver's held in this little spot, holding the clutch, hopefully. And I'm gonna reach in here. I'm gonna use a 1/2-inch drive ratchet, 17mm short impact socket, just because you don't need both all the time anyway. Did not work. Okay, didn't get on the first try. Wedged it in there a little bit better. It actually was not that tight. I would say it was like maybe like 60 foot-pounds or something. So easy enough to get off once you get the belt cover off. Soft handle screwdriver in there where it won't damage anything. Undo it. So here is the bolt out, normal thread, counterclockwise to loosen, easy enough. So I'm gonna take, this crankshaft pulley should slide off. It's gonna take a little bit of wiggling, but, oh, there we go. It just pulls off. And now we can see, well, I can see the bottom of the timing cover that I got on bolt. It looks like I might have to take the water pump pulley off, which is 4 10mm up there. So the bolts for the water pump pulley, I just used a 10mm ratchet wrench in my hand to hold the pulleys. I was able to get it off. If you had a fancy like electric ratchet, that'd probably be very easy too. So the water pump pulley I took off. You can see the water pump right there. There's 3 more bolts. I'm gonna use a 1/4-inch ratchet and an 8mm short socket. These should be easy work, and then the cover will pop off. So I have the lower cover off, and there's this like belt retaining ring deal here that just slides off. And I just wanted to point this out because mine, the belt broke, and it was actually a little wavy. I just used a hammer on the back of my vise on a flat spot, and I was able to flatten it out. So to get that tensioner off, I just used 13mm. Pop it off, very easy. Unthread it, pop it out. So you definitely want to do tensioner. I don't know if you're gonna be able to hear this, but so we're looking at the camshaft sprocket, and you can see I've marked on the back of the case here that that's a timing mark. We're lining up with this dot that's actually in the pulley. I marked them with paint, makes it a lot easier to see. Yeah, so I'd clean this up a little bit, get that set. I'm gonna go set the bottom here in a second, and I'll show you that too. Looking in from the bottom, there's the timing marks. There's a dot, there's a hole in the crankshaft sprocket, and then there's a mark over here on like probably the 4 o'clock. If you're staring at this right on, you're gonna line those up. I just used the open clutch here to get it lined up. You could put the bolt back in if you really wanted to and tighten it with the bolt. It shouldn't matter which way we turn either one of these ones. The camshaft sprocket, the cams are driven off each other with a gear, so I don't think there's anything that would be damaged turning it either way. Here's a quick clip. This has the procedure for tightening the timing belt tensioner. This is an old engine I have that I removed from another bike that has no compression. I'm going to use this as a training aid to show you how to put on and tension the belt. This one's outside the bike, so it's going to be a lot easier, but you can see a lot better. So you're going to want to line up your timing marks. I went over that. Once those are aligned and you have your new tensioner on with as much room as you can make, you're going to slide this belt over. I would recommend putting it like 1/3 to halfway on the bottom sprocket and around. You're going to need to kind of push this on super evenly. You're going to want to remove any slack from the side of the belt that has no tensioner. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, work my way around a little bit at a time, one on the top, one on the bottom, around the tensioner. Okay, so I'm on. You're going to want to now tension the timing belt. The procedure is use a flathead screwdriver. This is according to the manual. You can reach behind this little lever arm on the back of the tensioner, and then there's a piece on the engine block casting that you can pry off of. So I think you can see that. The spec for this prying off there is you want a gap at about the 9 o'clock on this tensioner to the case of 8 millimeters. So a block is nice to use, some sort of spacer. This is an M8 bolt that I have that you could use. You could use a drill bit that's 8 millimeter or 5/16. You could use an Allen wrench. I'm gonna use my best judgment to tighten this belt. I'm comfortable doing that. So I'm just gonna apply some tension and then to tighten this. The torque for the tensioner bolt is 18 foot-pounds. Once that is tight, you'll feel, obviously you can check your gap. Mine is a little more, which means it's actually a little bit tighter, but I'm comfortable with that. After you tighten this, you need to verify that your timing has remained true, and you should be good to go. The rest of this job, I'm going to go over it kind of quickly, is just throwing everything back together and putting the covers on. Here's my new belt on and tensioned. There's a lot more room to work on the top side here to do this. Pretty easy once you get everything in there. New belt all in. I'm going to start putting covers on. Just wanted to mention, don't forget this piece. This is what retains the timing belt onto the crank sprocket. And then it's just covers, more pulleys, harmonic balancer, belt. I'm just going to start putting this thing all together. I'm not going to capture all of that, but I'll do a couple clips along the way. Now I have the lower timing cover back on, the balancer / crankshaft pulley back on, the water pump pulley and the belt in and the belt tensioned. What I've done now, I'm at the point where I'm going to tighten the crankshaft pulley bolt. The torque spec for that is 73.8 foot-pounds. I'm going to do 75 foot-pounds, and I've done a similar method of blocking the engine with my soft screwdriver in the clutch again against the casing. So here goes. Yep, there we go. Cool. You don't need anything fancy. 75 foot-pounds. You could probably do it snug by hand and you'd be fine too if you didn't have a torque wrench. Top side all assembled. I try to hand tighten any bolts that are tightening plastic covers. Sometimes I'll run them in with an impact and then just do the last final torque with a ratchet or something. Plastic's pretty easy to break. This heat shield can be a little bit difficult to get in, but I put the nuts on from underneath and then held the nuts with a wrench and used an impact to tighten them. I'm gonna fire it up, see what happens. When I took my engine apart, it became apparent that the pin that is the pivot point for the timing belt tensioner had fallen out. So I think that's the reason that the belt had failed on the unit I fixed. This is a spare engine. I pulled that pin out and used it in mine. So I'm going to try to find that pin part number that I can attach also if you have a similar failure.